Hello. Ahead of the 2022 local elections, Reading today is interviewing all four party leaders. Now, this is an unusual election for Reading because all seats are being contested. This is due to the boundary changes, which have seen the number of seats increase from 46 to 48. During this interview, we're going to be focusing on 5 topics with about 5 minutes for each topic. At the end, the party leader will be able to make a direct address to you, the voter. While the candidates have been briefed on the subjects before the interview, they've not been given any questions in advance. Now, Reading Today has also prepared ward pages on its website, giving you the chance to meet each candidate, find out who's standing in each ward, and we'll get some details about that at the end of the video. With me now is Jason Brock. He's the leader of Reading Labour, and he's also the current leader of Reading Borough Council. Thanks for joining me today, Jason. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Phil. Nice to be with you.
The first thing that we're going to be talking about is development. This is quite a bit of a hot potato. Now, a lot of housing policy is dictated by the government. The current government has got high housing targets for the South East, and there's also plans to reform the planning system. So how can a Labour council influence Whitehall policy on Reading's social housing?
So in the past year, we've introduced a much stronger policy in terms of requiring affordable housing contributions from all private developments in the town. So we emphasise the provision of affordable rented properties on site. And we've had some success in terms of that. We've had planning applications recently that have offered very good affordable provision of family homes on the site of private development. So I think Labour's been very conscious of the fact that there is a housing crisis in Reading and across the southeast of England, across the country at large, arguably. And we use the planning system as effectively as we are able to get more affordable homes. However, you are right, Phil, when you say that it's the government really that determine ultimately the framework in which we operate. And so it's something that we continue to press on, and we continue to lobby government both directly and through the local government association to try to get changes in terms of laws so that we can have a much better, much more democratic planning system in place.
One of the things in your manifesto is a commitment to deliver 300 council homes over the next 4 years. Now, in terms of Reading's housing needs, that's a drop in the ocean. So why are you aiming so low with this target?
Well, 300 council homes in 4 years is not a low target. In fact, it's a very ambitious one. It's the biggest council housing programme in a generation here in Reading. It's as many council houses as were built in the entirety of the year 2004 across the entire country. So it really is actually quite large in scale, but I entirely accept I would like to do more. I would like to deliver many more council homes across the borough. But of course, the government impose a series of financial restrictions upon local authorities and have deprived us of funding over the past decade, taken tens of millions of pounds away from our annual budget that really constrains our ability to build more quickly. Reading has very tight urban boundaries as well. So over time, finding more and more spaces where we'll be able to deliver council housing is going to become a challenge. Now, we think we've identified a couple more sites over in my ward, Southcote, that I hope to add to that 300 total over the next couple of years. But beyond that, it is going to become challenging. We're going to have to start looking at more innovative ways of delivering social rent housing across the town.
There's also concerns from residents about the sheer number of flats and stuff that's shooting up around the perimeter of the town centre. So that the Royal Mail Sourcing Office is the latest scheme that's been put forward. There's been other ones that are either being built or being mooted. So how can Reading Town cope with more flats? Now, how can you square building more key worker homes when the town is actually fairly chocker and full of housing already?
So just because the town has provision of small flats doesn't mean that they're suitable necessarily for key workers. We should be clear about that. I mean, when we're talking about key worker housing, we're talking about housing that costs less than the market rate in order to allow key workers to come to the town and live here comfortably. Flats are a fact of life. You know, there are in fact many people who do want to live in flats, and flats can be perfectly good family homes as well. The problem we have in Reading is that too few private developers are building large family-sized flats. And again, you know, you will have seen that I and Councillor Tony Page, Deputy Leader of the Council, often calling on private developers to get real and deliver the kind of housing that Reading desperately needs. But there are advantages to flats as well. You know, they offer the opportunity, particularly where they're in the town centre, for car-free developments. There's a lot of people, younger people especially, who don't want to be tied down by a car. They want to live in a central urban location, a nice and exciting town centre like Reading, where they can use excellent public transport to get around. Obviously, flats can provide greater density per square metre than other forms of housing as well. Yeah, it's a reality of urban living that we are going to have flatted development. But that's not to say that there aren't family houses in the traditional way of thinking being delivered elsewhere in the town as well. So, you know, it's a difficult balance, as it always is in a town or a city, any dense urban area. But I think through the planning system, you know, we're able to challenge inappropriate development, and we're able to bring forward, push forward, give approval for appropriate developments that do deliver not just the flats themselves, but also funding to enhance the public realm in Reading, to enhance infrastructure in Reading, to enhance GP surgeries, to enhance schools. You know, private developments bring with them this funding, and it's only by having good and attentive Labour councillors that we're able to make that funding really deliver for people in Reading.
You've got a manifesto commitment that you want zero carbon new build housing. How are you going to make developers do that?
So we have one of the, in fact, the most stringent requirements in the country in our local plan for the delivery of zero carbon housing. And at the end of the day, if you want planning approvals here in Reading, you will need to commit to zero carbon in the construction of new homes. Now, we know that the planning inspector sometimes overturns decisions that we make, but we are very firm in that commitment, and we are very firm with developers when they apply to us for planning permission that they have to meet those requirements. We understand that it might take some developers a little bit more time to do it, or they will choose to deliver that net zero commitment in different ways. Ideally, we want as many environmental mitigations built into housing in the borough as possible.
We're going to move on to roads now, Jason. Obviously, it's another one of those hot potato subjects. You know, traffic's one of the downsides of living in Reading, and a good example of that is the recent works in Caversham, which in traffic snarl up all over town as a result. You know, we clearly need cars to get about, but is this an issue that we have to tolerate? Are Reading expected just to put up with the jams, or you know, how does it square with your desire to encourage sustainable transport in Reading?
Well, of course, people shouldn't have to put up with traffic jams. And in order to mitigate them, we need people to change their travelling habits. And I entirely acknowledge that there is work for us to do as councillors and as a council to provide the means for people to make that kind of shift. We need to make sure that the bus service in this town, very genuinely one of the very best bus services you will find anywhere in the country, but that the bus service continues to be enhanced, that it's convenient, that it's fast, that it's affordable, that everybody is able to access it wherever they live in the town. Similarly, if we want people to switch to cycling, we need to provide more segregated cycle lanes. I'm pleased that we're doing that. I'm pleased that we've got funding for a new scheme on Shinfield Road and for a new scheme on Bath Road. So we know that in order to reduce congestion, we need to get people out of their cars, particularly for those shorter journeys, the kind of journeys which are not necessary, and get them thinking about whether they can walk, whether they can use the bus, whether they can cycle, and provide the means to make that as easy as possible. So I do accept that, you know, it's a difficult thing at times, and we do have pinch points around the borough. It's particularly challenging for us all when there's an incident on the M4 and additional traffic comes through the town. Longer term, we are looking at the possibility of having a sort of charge on traffic passing through the borough, not residents in the borough moving around the borough, but people using Reading as a rat run between South Oxfordshire and the M4. And my sincere hope is that that would help to alleviate things. But really, we need our neighbouring authorities to come on board with us in order to make that a proper success. And South Oxfordshire and Oxfordshire County Council have always been quite reticent partners in terms of working with us for the provision of longer term vision for transport sustainability in that north-south link.
Now, you mentioned that, it's quite interesting. If you're pledging to create this third crossing, I know you're explicitly talking about that crossing into South Oxfordshire. You're not talking about trying to resurrect the mass rapid transit bus lane scheme that was going to destroy historic land at Kennet.
Yes, that's right. The third Thames crossing. So it's something that we've been talking about for a great many years. It requires the cooperation of South Oxfordshire District Council, and it requires the cooperation of Oxfordshire County Council. They engage with us on it. We've had greater progress than we've had for at least some decades. However, I remain concerned that we won't get it over the line. And at the end of the day, I would want to be reassured, and all of my colleagues would want to be reassured, that any third crossing is also compatible with our commitments around the environment and the climate. You know, there's no point as introducing something that, okay, it might alleviate some congestion, but actually has a massive detrimental effect on air quality in and around Reading. So we need to think about what that looks like, how it integrates sustainable travel options as well. And frankly, I think it is something that is still some way off. And so in the immediate period, the focus, particularly with that north-south link, is encouraging more people over to active travel, cycling, walking, and more people over to the bus. I'm pleased, for example, that we've recently got almost £25 million from government to enhance our bus services. And I'm sure some of that money will be wending its way to those North Reading, Caversham-based services.
Now, you're also talking in your manifesto about developing more park and rides with neighbouring authorities. But Thames Valley Park and Ride is only being used at the minute because of the works at Winnash. And those works have been slowed because of the effects of the pandemic. So, you know, people aren't getting back on the buses just yet. So is this a sign that you're actually making a promise that's actually worthless?
Oh, I don't think there's anything worthless, but we've shown a great commitment to park and ride services, all of which, funnily enough, have been opposed by the Green Party, which is a position that has always entirely perplexed me. We know that there is work to do because some of those park and ride services traditionally, things like Thames Valley, of course, there are fewer people working in the office at the moment, so the sort of economics are a bit different. But we do want to work to encourage people back to park and ride services to enhance the service. We'll be looking to use some of the 25 million of funding we've received in order to support them. We also have, Phil, a really fairly, pretty successful park and rail service over at Field that we've promoted in partnership with West Berkshire Council. So we'll look into those sort of options as we move forward as well, how we get people to maybe use the railways more to access Reading, especially with Reading West and Reading Green Park being entirely renewed or built in the case of Green Park. I think that's going to offer all sorts of opportunities for better rail links to Reading.
Moving on now to the cost of living. This is a national issue, but the impact is very local. What is it that Reading Labour could offer people at this time of crisis?
So we're the only party that have nationally a serious policy for resolving the cost of living crisis or mitigating the cost of living crisis. But locally, we've done an awful lot as well. We've provided energy vouchers and food vouchers for those on the very lowest incomes here in Reading. We've enhanced the council tax support scheme. So again, those on low incomes will have lower expenditure in the forthcoming year and beyond. We've managed to keep more generally our council tax rise below the rate of inflation, indeed below the rate of increase of many of the Conservative authorities around Berkshire as well. But those are sort of short-term fixes. I hope that they would help people get through. But I know that more generally, we need to ensure that everybody in Reading can share in the town's economic success. So I'm really pleased that we've made provision in our budget and we're announcing a big programme of targeted work in the neighbourhoods across the borough that are most in need of support to ensure that residents can access the economic opportunities, the employment opportunities here in Reading. And that's holistic support to help them reskill, to help them train, to help them get into apprenticeships, to help them get into employment, so that they are able to play a sort of, have a full share of the economic success of Reading. But cost of living is going to be one of the hot political issues in the next few years. I mean, really, this is a crisis on a scale that we haven't seen for a great many years, not really since the OPEC oil crisis in the 70s, actually.
One of the things that you talk about in the manifesto is investing £32 million to retrofit energy efficiency measures in council blocks. Now, where's that money going to come from, first of all? How long is it going to take? Is it a scheme that's going to take several years? And how will the residents of the council blocks benefit from that retrofitting?
So the money comes from our housing revenue account, which has been managed over a great many years in order to ensure that it has sufficient reserves in order to undertake works like this. It is going to take a few years to deliver it in all of the blocks. It's a big construction job to retrofit our blocks in that way. Of course, residents will see the benefit in terms of lowered energy bills. It helps the environment, yes. It reduces our carbon footprint, yes. But at the end of the day, residents are going to feel a positive effect in their pocket because it is going to help reduce their heating bills. And I think that's a really great thing. And I hope that by doing it, we also set an example for other landlords around the town that if you want to be a good and socially conscious landlord, if you want your tenants to be happy, you need to make these investments too. You need to retrofit your flats, your housing, whatever it might be, in order to ensure that tenants are not paying through the nose for energy, and to ensure that we as a town and as a community can meet our climate objectives.
Oh, interesting you touch on that, because obviously, again, one of your manifesto commitments is to try and ensure there's rent guarantees in place. How is that going to be something that you can mandate? How can it be something that you can control?
So the rent guarantee scheme is a scheme where the council guarantees rent. So where people are on our housing register, we offer the option of placing them in the private sector with a guarantee on their rent, so that landlords are happy with that situation, so that people whose income is maybe lower than the average, they have security in housing. And it means that we're able to get our housing register down. A few years ago, the housing waiting list in Reading was 10,000 people. Today, it's about 4,500. So still a lot of work to do, but we've made great strides by being innovative and offering things like the rent guarantee scheme.
Moving on to the council's finances. In 2020, 9 in 10 local authorities did not have enough money to cover their spending plans. Now, obviously, this was partly because it was a COVID year, but it is a problem because government support structures have changed in recent years. The revenue support grant has been reduced irreversibly, and we are talking about additional pressures caused by inflation, the rising cost of energy, the rising cost of building materials, inflation going up. How can a Labour council cope with the challenges that are ahead?
Well, by being prudent and by being robust. And so it's no secret, is it, Phil, that this council stared over the financial precipice not so many years ago. But look at where we are now, with a reserves position that makes us the envy of a great many of our neighbours, and with the ability, because of that robust reserves position and because of years of prudence and sensible financial planning, we're in a position to be able to invest across the town, invest in leisure centres, invest in railway stations, invest in our road network. 9 million over the past 3 years and 8 million more to be spent on roads over the next 3 years. So Reading has been innovative, and it's been cautious but ambitious at the same time, and that's allowed us to be now in probably one of the top third of financially robust local authorities in the country. However, I entirely agree that the situation is a very difficult one, and I remain very concerned that we will see another round of austerity from the Conservative government. And we know the challenges that come with that. We know that that will put tremendous pressure on services. I'm really proud that for an entire decade of austerity, we kept every single library branch open in this town when other councils were closing theirs. But as we move forward, government really needs to understand that it's time to invest in local areas, it's time to invest in local councils, because we can deliver not only happier residents with the services they need, but also that all plays a part in creating a good economy that provides greater tax revenue to the Treasury and helps Britain move out of its debt position. So I really think that government, I plead with them to not go down the route of austerity again, and to understand that investing in councils, investing in local communities can deliver an awful lot of benefits for the country, as well as for individual towns and communities.
Well, now, there's a couple of things that have come up from the opposition parties. The Green Party have made a great thing about having to hand back £500,000 of funding for insulations. And there's also been concerns about how Reading's accounts have been delayed in recent years. Is this a sign that Reading Labour is incompetent?
Not at all. It's a sign, certainly with the Greens, I think it's a sign that they don't understand how the council's finances work. So the grant that was returned was because it transpired that a great many of our properties were already of an EPC rating too high for that grant to be spent on them. So therefore that money had to be returned to government. So it's a big problem, I think, if national government are providing funding to local authorities that can't be used because we're already overachieving in their eyes, when we could have put that money to good use. So it's disingenuous to claim that we had to hand that back because we didn't use it. We had to hand it back because we couldn't use it because of the restrictions placed upon it by national government. With the accounts, again, there were issues with the accounts, particularly in 2016-17, which was the year I first became a councillor. There were technical issues. They didn't affect the bottom line of the council at all. And we've now moved past them and improved. In fact, we're about to sign off the 1920 accounts, unqualified accounts, and that will bring us up to date with where every other local authority currently is in Berkshire. We can't move forward from there because Conservative-controlled Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead is unable to sign off the accounts on the Berkshire Pension Fund. And until they can do that, we can't progress with our 20 to 21 accounts. So as I say, it brings us to where every other council in Berkshire is. So I accept that there was a historic issue with the accounts. I'm glad that we've managed to make the changes that we have. I'm glad that we've managed to make the improvements that we have. But I think the proof is in the pudding. When you look around Reading and you see the investments being made, I think it's very hard to say that that's because we're incompetent. In fact, that's evidence of our competence with finances and the prudence over a number of years that has allowed us to build up to this position.
Well, moving on to governance, and Reading has traditionally been a council with a very strong Labour majority. There's only been a few years where it's been no overall control. Do you feel that opposition views are listened to enough, or do you feel that it's right to ignore them?
So in 2014 in Reading, we moved to the committee system of governance, to the modern committee system of governance, you might call it, having previously had an executive model like Wokingham or West Berkshire do. And that move to the committee system, I think, has really enhanced the democracy of the council, because it means opposition parties are an element of every single decision that is made by the authority. It builds scrutiny into the decision-making process. It's a much more inclusive system, and it's a much more discursive system as well. I think by having strong Labour control of this authority, we've been able to move the town forward, to be ambitious and to be aspirational. But I do acknowledge, of course, that there's a role for opposition councillors. And I think if you look at how our committee system has functioned over the past few years, it's been really good actually to have that scrutiny of decisions and to have those discussions in public and scrutinised by the press as well. I think we've really been able to move forward in enhancing the democratic culture here in Reading, not to mention having an almost annual cycle of elections, which keeps people engaged.
Now, we're seeing from the party game, the national issue, that public trust in politicians is in a very strange place right now. And the usual same old comments, all politicians are all the same. How can voters trust Reading Labour?
Well, Reading Labour, unusually, in fact, the only party standing local Reading residents in every single seat at this election. So other parties are bringing people in from outside, or they're not standing in every single seat. So I think instantly you can see that it's only Labour who are really representative of people here in Reading. If you look at our plethora of candidates, you will see people from all of Reading's different communities. We are diverse and we are representative of Reading. And because of that, we also care passionately about Reading. It's our home too. We all live here. A great many of us also work here. And so by voting for Labour candidates on Thursday, the 5th of May, you are voting for a resident like yourself. And I think that's the strongest and most powerful thing. Nationally, politicians have a lot of work to do, particularly parliamentarians, to rebuild trust with the electorate. I accept that, and I think the Labour Party nationally has to play an important role in that. But locally, we're residents like you. We want to give back to our community. We want to serve you, and we want to work with you, and that's why you can have trust in us.
Now, it's Friday, May the 6th. Reading Labour have won the overall control of the council again. What's going to be your day one priority? What's the first thing you're going to do if Labour wins the election?
Labour wins the election. My day one priority. Well, firstly, I will take a moment to celebrate, Phil. I won't lie. It's a very exhausting process running for election, and really proud of all of the effort that all of my colleagues are putting in as well. But for me, my day one priority is to really get cracking with this targeted work to tackle inequalities around our town. I think it is unacceptable to me that Reading is the third most unequal place in the country, and we need to get to grips with that, and we need to ensure that people can share in success. And that for me is my entire, if I'm honest, is my entire reason for getting involved in politics. It's the entire reason I'm a Labour councillor, and I really want to get stuck into it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Jason. That concludes the interview. And obviously now this is your opportunity to make a direct appeal to Reading voters. Why should people vote Labour?
Thanks, Phil. So I'd say Labour is best for Reading because Labour delivers for Reading, and we've proven that over a number of years. We're aspirational for our town and for our communities. We're investing in facilities and we're investing in services across the entirety of Reading. The best leisure centres Reading has ever had, the best railway stations in Reading's history, the biggest road resurfacing programme ever, and the biggest council home building programme in a generation. All of it because Labour councillors and because residents have put their trust in Labour at the ballot box. Other parties, I'm afraid, are not taking this election seriously. They treat it as a game rather than as a serious matter with consequences for people's lives. Only Labour is standing local residents in every single seat. We aren't press ganging people in from Oxford and from Wokingham like others are. Our candidates live in Reading and they reflect the diversity of Reading. Now, I believe that everybody deserves an excellent councillor to represent them. And only by casting your free votes for Labour can you guarantee that your councillor will be a champion for your area, because whatever their background, they are Reading through and through. They're people who want to serve the town that we all call home. And because Reading is our home, we're ambitious for it. We've taken the town to national and global recognition for its work to tackle the climate crisis. Our economy is booming despite all the challenges, regularly rated as one of the strongest in the UK. Yet I do know that in some of our neighbourhoods, people haven't always shared in that success. So we're beginning a new programme of work to help ensure that everybody can. And we're building council homes and affordable homes across Reading. so that families, key workers, and our older generations don't have to choose between the town they love and moving elsewhere on the grounds of cost. So only Labour have a coherent vision for Reading, and only Labour have the candidates to deliver it. And I hope that you'll vote for us on Thursday, the 5th of May, because a vote for Labour is a vote for a council that will work with you and work for you, and a council that will deliver what is best for Reading. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Jason. So this is the interview with Jason Brock, the leader of Reading Borough Council, been organised by Reading Today, Reading New newspaper. On our website, we've got special board pages set up detailing where the polling stations are, and also little portraits, little biographies of each of the candidates who are standing. We want to make sure that you've got as much information as you can ahead of the May the 5th elections. Thank you very much.